What's going on, guys? Welcome to Wicked and Wild, where we cover all types of true crime, whether solved or unsolved, terrifying or tragic, or just plain wicked and wild. I'm your host, Tyler, here to give you exactly what you came for. And with that being said, please like, comment, subscribe, and let's jump right into it. Our case today brings us to the year 1999 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with the then 20-year-old Cynthia Vigil Jaramillo. Cynthia had a very rough childhood by any standard, and sadly, at a young age, was forced to grow up fast and learn how to survive in the harsh streets of Albuquerque. Cynthia had turned to the dangerous profession of sex work at just 13 years old, and by 1999, she considered herself pretty experienced and capable of staying out of harm's way. One day, in March that same year, Cynthia was working the streets of Albuquerque when she was stopped by a man who propositioned Cynthia, offering her money for her services. She agreed, and always being in need of money, he then walked her over to his RV. Cynthia, being the veteran street worker that she was, had a set of rules she'd made over the years to follow to ensure she'd make it back safe. One of those rules was to never get in an RV. But just like many other people, the power of money can be overwhelming at times. And unfortunately, this just happened to be one of those times. After Cynthia got in the vehicle, the man flashed a badge and claimed he was actually a police officer while putting handcuffs on her, claiming she was under arrest for soliciting sex. As soon as the man had Cynthia handcuffed, he yelled out the name Cindy, which startled Cynthia because she hadn't told the man her real name. That's when a woman appeared behind Cynthia and shocked her with a cattle prod. Now paralyzed for a moment, Cynthia was then dragged to the back of the RV where the two handcuffed her to a cabinet. And after making sure she wasn't going anywhere, the two got back in the front seats and began to drive off. While the man and the woman named Sydney focused on driving, Cynthia, though never kidnapped, was used to dangerous people and situations, and so began her attempt to escape. She was able to unscrew the handle of the cabinet she was handcuffed to and was able to stand up. With hands still cuffed behind her back, she partially stood up and planned to jump out of the RV the very first time it came to a stop. But just moments later, the man, for whatever reason, slammed on his brakes, causing Cynthia to tumble and catch the attention of Cindy, who then came to the back of the RV pointing a gun at helpless Cynthia. Knowing she's now in a bad spot, doesn't dare move as the RV pulls over and the man comes walking to the back, straight towards her. And that's when everything goes black. Sometime later, Cynthia wakes up, hoping it was all just a nightmare. That's until she realizes she's completely naked, a dog collar with a padlock around her neck, and chained down to what seemed to be like a medical table. Seconds later, she would experience something straight out of a Hollywood horror, an audio created by the man who'd kidnapped her. And unfortunately, this man's name would be David Parker Ray.
I'm going to tell you, in detail, why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here. You've been taken by force, and you're going to be kept and used by force. What all this amounts to is that you're going to be kept naked and chained up like an animal, to be used and abused anytime we want to, any way that we want to. And you might as well start getting used to it, because you're going to be kept here and used until such time as we get tired of fucking around with you. You're here, and we're going to make the most of it. You're going to be kept in the hidden slave room. It is relatively soundproof, escape-proof, and it is completely stocked with devices and equipment to satisfy our sexual fetishes and deviations. Here, your status is no more than that of one of the dogs or of one of the animals out in the barn. Your only value to us is the fact that you have an attractive, usable body. And, like the rest of our animals, you will be fed and watered, kept in good physical condition, kept reasonably clean, and allowed to use the toilet when necessary. In return, you're going to be used hard, especially during your first few days while you're new and fresh.
After listening to the terrifying, almost hour-long audio detailing why she was there, what was going to happen to her, and for how long, Cynthia was understandably completely terrified. Based on the audio, David had been doing this a very long time, and over the years, he collected what he called toys, and built a soundproof and escape-proof room that he called his toy box, which is where Cynthia would endure unspeakable tortures, as many girls seemingly did before her. And over the next 3 days, David would consistently torture and assault Cynthia with the help of his girlfriend Cindy. And sparing the details, it was truly some of the most harsh, disgusting, and inhumane acts one person can do to another. Cynthia quickly realized that the only way she was going to make it out of this nightmare alive was to escape. But there was a problem. She was constantly under watch, especially by David's girlfriend, Cindy. After 3 days of torture, Cynthia would finally get her one and possibly only chance. While David was away, Cynthia was on the couch with Cindy, and as weird as it was, still chained and watching TV. While the two continued to watch TV, Cindy got a phone call that excited her, and in her excitement made a mistake that would give Cynthia a chance of a lifetime. Cindy, while on the phone, would get up and take the phone call into another room, not knowing she left the keys to Cynthia's freedom on the table just out of arm's reach, or so she thought. Cynthia, realizing her captor's mistake, tried to reach the keys, but unfortunately, they really were just out of arm's reach. But knowing that this was a chance she might not get again, she decided to use her feet and, while stretching her entire body, was able to inch the table close enough to her where she was able to get the keys into her hands. Cynthia worked quickly to unlock the padlock that kept her chained and was on the second key when Cindy ran back into the room to find Cynthia in the middle of her escape. Cindy immediately grabbed a table lamp and started smashing it over Cynthia's head in an attempt to stop her from unlocking the padlock that kept her chained. Running off of pure adrenaline, Cynthia ignored the blows while she continued to try to find the key that would release her into freedom. But with every blow she took, she was one step closer to blacking out. And just when it seemed like her attempt would end in failure, she found the key and quickly unlocked the padlock that set her free. But unfortunately, it wasn't over just yet. Right as she managed to unchain herself, she felt a sharp pain and realized Cindy had stabbed her, and this was now a fight for her life. Cynthia noticed an ice pick on the table, and with one last rush of adrenaline, stabbed Cindy and immediately bolted right out of the house. Cynthia was completely naked, covered in blood, and still had on the dog collar and chains, but this wasn't a time to worry about how she looked. She needed to get someone's attention and to get help. When she was running outside, she realized she was in a trailer park full of neighbors. And that's when she remembered a part of the audio that was played for her when she was first kidnapped.
Also, we have a couple of real close friends we party with once in a while. They know about our hang-ups and don't have any problem with fucking a slave. You may be required to service them occasionally, but that's an easy one. For the most part, just fucking and sucking.
David commented that there was no need to worry about any people or neighbors close by becoming suspicious of their activities. And the reason for this was truly bone-chilling. All of David's neighbors knew about his and Cindy's kidnappings and evil activities and turned a blind eye to it, as long as their neighbors would be able to participate when wanted. And Cynthia knew it would be the end if she ran into one of these neighbors. Cynthia, thinking quick and without stopping, continued to run up the road until she saw a trailer with their lights on, and without knocking, ran right into the trailer and into the kitchen where an elderly woman was standing doing the dishes and didn't even hear or notice Cynthia. She immediately turned the elderly woman around and started screaming that she needed help and to call 911, which the woman did.
Yes, I'm calling for a young lady that ran into the house. She says she's just been raped. She's got a chain on her and everything. Send someone right away. This lady's naked and everything else. She said they've been holding her for 3 days.
Police would arrive shortly later and apprehend both David Parker Ray and his girlfriend Cindy Hendy near their home, in their so-called toy box. This would uncover a secret that wouldn't just explode all over New Mexico, but the entire country. David Parker Ray was actually the toy box killer, a serial rapist and serial killer. As if this story couldn't get more twisted, what the police would find in David's toy box would show just how evil, sick, and cruel some men and even women could be. David Parker Ray was always a bit of an outcast. Bullied in school and abused at home, he turned to drugs and alcohol, self-medicating and self-soothing. It's thought his father had introduced him to adult magazines at a young age, and later being confirmed by his sister. He later joined the army, from which he was honorably discharged. And before his girlfriend Cindy, David had married and divorced 4 times. During the investigation, police started to piece together this disgusting crime and poor excuse of a human being, later stating that they believed David began to abduct, assault, torture, and presumably kill women in the mid-1950s. Police were able to confirm that the terrifying and extremely creepy audio recording of David that Cynthia was forced to listen to when she was kidnapped was originally recorded in 1993, 6 years before she was kidnapped, meaning it's likely that many other women suffered through the same traumatizing audio before suffering at the hands of David. Among the many other horrific discoveries police made in the toy box, they would find many videos and photos of other victims, and lots of them. Police would take a freeze-frame picture from one of the videos they found in the toy box, and that picture was a tattoo on the body of a woman they believed might be out there, and in hopes of her coming forward, released it to the public. And unbelievably, she would. The woman was identified as Angelica M. Angelica came forward to tell how she was abducted only a month before Cynthia, and even reported her kidnapping, but the police failed to properly investigate. 1 month prior to Cynthia's kidnapping, Angelica was out at the bar with a friend, Glenda Jessie Ray, for a couple of drinks and some fun together. The next thing she remembers was waking up in her bed, without having a clue of how she got there, or what happened, or how much time had passed. She would try to shake it off as just a hard night at the bar, and maybe she drank too much. But ever since that day, she would have vivid nightmares every night that made it hard for her to sleep and gave her a feeling that something must have happened that night. Glenda Jessie Ray, Angelica's friend who was with her at the bar the night before blacking out, was actually David Parker Ray's daughter. David didn't just have help from his sick and twisted girlfriend, but his sick and twisted daughter would help get victims for his evil desires also. Unfortunately, Angelica now would find out what happened to her that night from the video that David took without her even knowing. David wouldn't always kill his victims. Sometimes he would let them go, but not before playing with their mind. David would give them heavy drugs and play mind games with them for a few days before even thinking about releasing them. And in this way, they would have no idea or recollection of what had happened, why it happened, or how much time had passed. David clearly had been doing this a very, very long time. Police would also find evidence of multiple murders committed by David Parker Ray, his girlfriend Cindy Hendy, David's daughter Glenda Jessie Ray, and Glenda's friend Dennis Roy Yancey, where Dennis claimed David forced him to help with the murders or pay dearly with his own life, which Dennis supposedly complied. David Parker Ray was eventually sentenced in 2001 to 224 years in prison for multiple offenses, including the abduction and sexual torture of 3 women. David's own daughter, Glenda Jessie Ray, was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 on probation, following a plea deal made by her father. David's girlfriend and accomplice, Cindy Hendy, pleaded guilty in 1999 to kidnapping and torturing women. In return, she was sentenced to 36 years, but became eligible for parole after spending half of that time in prison. And, unbelievably, she was released in 2019. Glenda's friend, Dennis Roy Yancey, pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to 30 years, and also was unfortunately released in 2021. Unfortunately, justice wasn't served to the fullest for Cynthia or the countless other victims. This would be due to David dying of a heart attack in May 2002, just 3 short years into his prison sentence. Despite his death, the case of the toy box killer remains a priority, and with David believed to have killed as many as 50 people, police will continue to investigate, with the earliest example of this being in 2011 near Elephant Butt Lake, but finding nothing. Cynthia would go on to become the founder of Street Safe New Mexico, a non-profit organization that aims to help women affected by sex trafficking, homelessness, and addiction. Cynthia has since healed from her kidnapping, but hasn't forgotten it. This was super traumatizing for her that nobody can really imagine, and luckily, she's alive to tell the story. Cynthia has also done a few interviews about the case and about David.
I'm not his victim. I was never his victim. I wish he could have known that.
Now, this case was pretty disturbing to research and write. It's not every day you hear about such evil acts committed by people. I mean, really, if you look into it, some of the things he did are just, normal people just don't think this way. The most unfortunate part of this whole story, though, is that the man that got away with so many crimes for so long and has allegedly hurt 50 people, which many believe to be much, much higher of a number, had just done 3 years in prison. One thing that I think is very important to note here is that we get so caught up in the criminals or killers that have made this story possible. But the real people that should be remembered are the victims, and they get usually glazed over by the disturbing acts of said criminals. I truly hope that the survivors of David Parker Ray are doing better and, if even possible, have moved on and continue healing. My heart also goes out to the victims' families who don't know what happened to their loved ones and may have suffered at the hands of this disgusting pervert. Now, I'm a big fan of minding my own business, and if it doesn't involve me, I don't get involved. But especially when it comes to women and children, if you think your neighbors are doing something, you should step in or at least notify somebody. This case just goes to show you, you don't know who might live next to you or right down the street from you. But just remember to always keep an eye out, and if you think that there's something going on, you should trust your gut feeling. And with that being said, I hope you guys liked the video. I really took a lot of time in researching it and trying to write it from Cynthia's perspective, since she had done so much and gone through so much that I felt it was super important to really tell the story from her point of view, or at least try to narrate it from her side. Please guys, if you have any advice or any feedback on the video, I'd love to hear it. I really enjoy making these videos. It takes a lot of time and it's hard to do after work, but this is something I just love to do. So if you liked it, please let me know. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more weekly videos. And with that being said, it's time to wrap this one up. I'll see you on the next one.